take a moment, close your eyes if you like, and let's imagine the unimaginable. You're 5 years old in a third world country. Today your mother died of AIDS. You have no home. You have no food. You're HIV positive. Remember, you're 5 years old. And you have no medication. You have no hope. The government won't help you. So who will? A Hope for Children. And so, I want to thank you all for coming. And I want to show you just a brief little presentation before I introduce myself and our other speaker. My name is Tom Starko. I'm the Executive Director of AHOPE For Children. And first of all, as always, it's a privilege and an honor to be able to take up what we have is a very limited amount of time this morning, 30 minutes, but I really appreciate the time that you do spend with us. What we're going to talk about in this limited time is a little bit about AHOPE For Children, a little bit about pediatric AIDS, HIV around the world as it relates to adoption, but most importantly, I want to get out of here and get Lonka to speak to you. Lonka Domberger is with us today, and Lonka is an adoptive parent of an HIV positive child. And she will tell you a little bit about her experience, her fascinating experience. So just before I tell you a little bit about AHOPE, let's put a framework around what HIV/AIDS looks like today and what we are dealing with. And what I'm going to do, we're a small group here, it's a very intimate setting, and I'm going to put a number up here and just shout out what you think that number is as it relates to, all of these numbers relate to AIDS, HIV, orphans, etc. 33 million.
That's a year.
Close. This is the number of people who are living HIV positive in the world. 2.2 million? Exactly. 2.2 million children who are HIV positive. 500,000? You're probably correct. 500,000 new infections last year, new HIV infections with children. 300? Yeah, that's probably pretty close too, but no, of that 500,000, 300 became infected since we all got up this morning. 300,000. 300,000, I'm sorry, that was a little out of order. 300,000 are the number of child deaths last year as a result of HIV/AIDS. 80% of those deaths occur in Africa. 90% African children account for 90% of all pediatric AIDS worldwide. 90%, it's an amazing figure in one continent. 12 million. There are 12 million children who have lost one or more parents to just AIDS in Africa. Finally, I think as it relates this morning, one, I think this is the most important number. It's the number of children in this room who were at one time an HIV positive orphan. And that's where Wellness is going to come in. The impetus for AHOPE for Children grew in the late 1990s in Ethiopia, where a decade of famine, war, a border war with Eritrea, drought, an entire generation of children had lost their parents to HIV/AIDS. And so there were orphanages all over the country, and even in the best intended of those organizations running the orphanages, most of them were pretty squalid conditions. In 1998, an organization called Adoption Advocates International had gone over, had seen the conditions happening in Ethiopia, and they set up the first orphanage there with the sole intent of getting these children adopted into American families. The only problem is that 1 out of 6 of the children who came to the AAI orphanage tested positive for HIV. And unfortunately, because the sole purpose of the AAI orphanage was to move these kids out, it was not possible to admit these children. You know, it's interesting as I talk about this, and I talk about what happened just a short time ago, only a few years ago, we would not be having this discussion. 3 years ago, the children of Ethiopia that we're talking about today at AHOPE did not have access to antiretroviral drugs. 3 years ago, if you were an HIV positive person, you could not emigrate to this country, thereby making adoption impossible. All of that has changed, and that's the encouraging part, you know, when we talk about dark to dawn. I guess that, you know, we've talked about the dark side. There is a dawn side here. so AAI was very successful in doing what they were doing, but then there was Cinta. Marilee Ripley, who is the executive director and founder of AAI, happened to be over in Ethiopia when Cinta had come through the gates. And Cinta, she had never slept in a bed. She was 6 years old. She had never slept in a bed before. She was a double orphan. And when she came to Layla House at AAI, she took great pleasure in the care and the love that she received, and having toys and a bed to sleep in, and being able to have the caregivers put beads in her hair for 2 weeks. Cinta essentially arrived in what she thought was heaven. A routine test indicated that Cinta was HIV positive. Cinta was no longer allowed to stay at Layla House with AAI, and she left the orphanage. She was pretty much dragged out of the orphanage crying, and her fate was pretty much locked up at that time. At that point, Marilee said, that's enough. We need to set up an orphanage just for HIV positive kids. Now, like I said, immigration was impossible, so it was simply a place where these children could go and live out their last days. And so Marilee asked her friend, our founder, Kathy Olson, if she would set up this orphanage. And these children were not only denied the right to have a full life, but on top of all of that, they were denied the right to die in the arms of a loving parent. And when I first started volunteering at AHOPE in Ethiopia, we were essentially a hospice. But that was then, and this is now. Today, you will find the same facility full of healthy, energetic, loving children who are receiving antiretroviral medications. They have an education system, the proper nutrition, which is so important with HIV/AIDS. And so it's a very, very different situation there today. How do we do it? Well, AHOPE operates 2 orphanages, one for young children, one for older children, all HIV positive. And the sole purpose of those orphanages are to get those children into their forever families. And as I said, over the last 3 years, just within AHOPE, we are now at just over 100 adoptions. This is a relatively new thing that's happening, but it's accelerating very, very quickly. We also operate what we call the Child Development or the Community Development Center. And the Community Development Center is a place where those children who still have some sort of semblance of a family, maybe living with a grandmother or an aunt, can come during the day, get their antiretroviral medication, they get proper nutrition, education. Most of the children are so stigmatized there being HIV positive, they're not allowed into the regular school system. And so an interesting story is one of the things that we try to do at the Community Development Center is to break down that stigma of being HIV